All right. The last work we're going to look at from ancient Greece is the Venus de Milo, which is a depiction of the Greek goddess Aphrodite, also known as Venus. And this is in the very late Greek period called the Hellenistic period. This is after the death of the leader Alexander the Great. And it's hard to generalize about Hellenistic art. It's very diverse. And what we do see is a kind of moving away from that strict Greek quest for perfection and idealism. This work is she is missing her arms, and we're looking at a reconstruction here from the early 20th century of what that might have looked like. There's a whole range of positions that have been suggested. Leaning against a pillar, as what we see in the reconstruction here, perhaps maybe resting her elbow on the shoulder of another figure. There's been suggestions about her holding a variety of objects. She is popularly thought to represent Aphrodite because of her sensual feminine curves and her half-nakedness. She might even be holding an apple in her left hand, which would be an allusion to a scene called the Judgment of Paris. Paris was a figure who was meant to judge who was the most beautiful, and he gave Aphrodite an apple after crowning her the most beautiful. However, she might be the sea goddess who was venerated on the island of Milo. But what the elements that are Hellenistic here are the kind of spiraling composition of her body, the way she twists that make her really three-dimensional. The way that we have all of this kind of finely detailed drapery as it cascades around her legs and hips. And for Praxiteles, Praxiteles becomes a master sculptor of hair and all of this delicate modeling of the form. Now we're going to jump ahead to the Renaissance, and we're past the year zero. We're into the mid to late 15th century in Italy. And we're jumping ahead because the Renaissance is really a rebirth in the interest in ancient Greece and Rome, in the types of Greek sculpture that we've just studied. And in fact, the word Renaissance means rebirth in French, referring to this renewed interest in Greece and Rome. And in the Renaissance, we see artists really thought of as intellectuals. The status of the artist is elevated as he's not just a crafts worker anymore, but he's really seen as someone on par with a philosopher or a scientist. And we're also going to move into the Baroque era. We're going to see three sculptures from the Italian Renaissance and the Italian Baroque periods, and they're all the same subject. And that subject is the Old Testament figure of David. We're going to start in the mid-15th century with Donatello's version of David. And just to refresh our memories here, David, early in his life, he's assembled with his compatriots, and it looks like they're going to be defeated in this key battle. And the opposing army, they send out their Goliath, this monster, this giant, and Goliath asks, he taunts and says, "Who dare fight me?" And everybody on David's side is looking at this Goliath saying, "No way." And little scrawny David, he agrees to fight Goliath. And he defeats Goliath using a slingshot and a rock. And what we see in Donatello's depiction is not the slingshot that he uses to hit Goliath, stun him, and then make Goliath fall over, but instead we see the post-battle moment where David has taken a sword and decapitated Goliath. And we see the head of Goliath here that David stands on. And what's so important here, and I think this work really characterizes the Renaissance well, is that it's the first known life-sized, freestanding male nude since antiquity. That's a lot. The first known life-sized, freestanding, sculpted in the round, male nude since antiquity. The patron is somebody from the Medici family. This is a powerful Italian family. They lived in Florence, made a lot of money in banking, and they were important art patrons and art collectors. David was a symbol for the city of Florence because this is the classic underdog tale. And what's interesting, I think, about this depiction of David is that we don't see some sort of fierce, strong warrior, but we see a very young boy in that kind of classical contrapposto stance. He has very feminine facial features, long hair. It really does make his victory all that more incredible. Now, Michelangelo's David, done about a half century later at the high point of the Renaissance, is so different. Here, we don't see the kind of soft body, boyish David of Donatello, but instead we see this moment where David is getting himself ready for battle, and we see the idealized, very naturalistic form here. In fact, it's so detailed that we can even see the veins in his hand that cradles the rock. We see every line and detail in David's musculature. This is a guy who spends a lot of time at the gym. And let's look at this intense gaze here. This is somebody who is collecting himself for the battle at hand, looking off into the distance to meet his enemy. This work was also done in Florence, but it was actually done for the city. So Donatello's David was a private commission done for a family, a prominent family, to display in their villa. But Michelangelo's David actually became kind of the mascot of Florence. It was displayed outside of the city hall on the main plaza, on the main town square, and really became a kind of icon for the city. In the Baroque period, Baroque art builds on the classicism of the Renaissance, but adds more drama, adds more emotion and spirit to that kind of cool, calm austerity of the Renaissance. And we see this here with Bernini's David. So yet again, another version of David. And also, Bernini is depicting yet another moment of the battle. I think if we take Donatello, Michelangelo, and Bernini all together, what's so significant is which moment of the story of David and Goliath they choose to depict. And Bernini, being a Baroque artist who wants to depict the kind of pinnacle of emotion, of drama, he is choosing this precise moment when David has loaded the slingshot here, and he's stepping back in this dynamic, twisting pose. He's about to launch the rock, the kind of decisive blow to defeat Goliath. And let's look at these facial expressions side by side. So we see Bernini's David on the left, Michelangelo's David on the right. I mean, look at the intensity of Bernini's David, the way he's biting his lip, he's furrowing his brow, his hair is all tousled. I mean, our heart just races looking at this expression. And then as we move around this sculpture, we also see it's so full of life and energy that no matter what angle we're looking at it, it's so different. We really see something that engages us on a different level. We have to become a more active viewer of art. We have to be walking around, interacting with this sculpture because of all of the implied movement and the energy. All right, that is the end of the information for week 10. Make sure that you have fully completed all of the readings for week 10. Make sure to complete the exam. So there's no discussion this week, but instead it is exam 2 on units 3 and 4. And get in touch with me if you have any questions. I am happy to help. Take care.